This session is going to show you how to use the TidyCensus package and some other tools in R to be able to easily get data from the U.S. Census Bureau. We're going to start by opening up RStudio and then go to the upper right corner where it says Project and say Open Project. And navigate to the project file that I sent you. It should be called Using TidyCensus. So it should be r_using tidycensus.rproj. When you open this up, it's going to launch a script. And you will see in the lower left corner, if you click on the Files tab, it should show you the files that are associated with this project. And that includes this .rmd file, which is an R Markdown file, which is what you see in the upper left pane. In the lower bottom, you should see the console. If you can't see it, you might just need to scroll this a bit, or under the View menu, you can have it turn on various parts of the tools here. Move focus to console, for example. The script in our Markdown page allows you to make HTML pages, but it also allows you to do your work and then have it show you some results right in the page, which is quite useful for someone who's doing analysis. So at the top, this is called the Yamo Header. We're not going to focus too much on that today, but that is used for the output of the page. This knitr opchunk set echo equals true dictates what shows up on your HTML page, so we're also not going to mess with that. And then starting at about row 12 is where we have our code, where we load our packages and get everything rolling. I have a bit of code here that looks to see if you have all these packages loaded on your computer, and if not, it will install them for you. So in order to run something in R, if you're new to R, there's a bunch of different ways to do it, especially here in R Markdown. The simplest is to highlight the part that you want to run and go to the top, and there's an R menu, a run menu that gives you a bunch of options. One is to say run selected lines, and that will run any of the lines that you have highlighted. It's also important to note, you'll see that this is an R chunk. You'll see that it starts with three little backslashes, then ends with 3 little backslashes. You can tell R to run current chunk, for example. You can do that from up here in the run menu. You can also do it right here with this menu. There's also shortcuts available for keyboard shortcuts available for depending on Windows or Mac. They're a little bit different. So we can put our cursor here, and we actually don't need to run this knitr opchunks. It'll automatically run when we do this first part. But let's just highlight the packages part and say run selected lines. It'll take a second here to make sure you have everything. Yours might take a little longer than mine, because I do know I have everything installed. And if it's installing things, you'll see that happening down here in the console part. You might see some red text that might look alarming, but it probably is not. You just want to look for any messages that say something like it could not be installed or something like that. Once your packages are installed, you should be able to find them over here in the lower right. There's a search button you can use, a search bar you can use to see if a package is there. You'll probably see that it's there, but notice that none of my packages here are checked in these little boxes. That's because we have not turned any on yet for this particular project. And this is something you have to do for every project you do, even once you've installed all your packages. Notice that this code up here is kind of some default that you don't have to run it if you know you have all your packages installed, but it's a good thing if you're going to share your package or your project like I did here, so that other people make sure they have all the right packages installed. Here where it says library, TidyCensus, Tidyverse, etc., this is where we turn on those packages for use in this particular project. So I'm going to highlight all of these and say run selected lines. And it's going to take a minute, and you'll see down in the console it's loading all of them, and no red anything to worry about down there. So you should have a Census API key. You should have gotten directions separately on how to do that. There's a little bit of information here as well. If you need to load your key for the first time, you would actually run this line of code. Right now, this line of code on my sheet is commented out using this hashtag. And when you comment something out, it means it will not see it as code. You'll see I have a lot of text up here that is commented out for information for you. And so that's how you can put some annotations in your code. This is a good practice to annotate what you're doing so that if you come back to this code a while later, or if you share it with someone else, you can see what's going on. So if you've got your Census API key loaded with this line of code, then the thing you have to run every time you want to run any time you want to use Census, the TidyCensus package, you would load your key for use in this instance. So that's what I'm going to do here, run selected lines. So there's more information here about TidyCensus, but basically what is happening here is that the TidyCensus package is taking advantage of the Census Bureau's API, which is where they are storing all of their big data files. And what is really sweet about this is that you don't need to know any advanced coding languages other than some of this R stuff here to be able to get data out of that API. It has really simplified the process for you here. And I think you don't even need to know a ton of R code in order to make this useful. The big advantage I've seen to this compared to using like data.census.gov is that you can go into a census table, find a single table, maybe, and then pull out maybe 1, 2, 3 columns. You don't have to take all the columns. You don't even have to take maybe all the geographies. Maybe you only want one state or one city, or maybe you want a handful of places. Maybe you want Minnesota, Wisconsin, and North Dakota and South Dakota. There's a lot of different ways you can spin it and get it all out in one file without having, whereas on data.census.gov you'd have to go get a bunch of separate files. You'd have all the columns that come with it. Maybe it's more than you really need, and you'd have to filter it down. So there's my pitch for TidyCensus. So the first thing you need to do is get some variables, figure out what you want to do. And so I've given you some guidance here on doing that. The census website has a HTML page where you can look up all the tables and all the variable names that you need, or you could also load the variables right into R, and that's what this is doing here. It's loading the ACS1, so the American Community Survey 1 year from 2018, which is the most current as of right now, and it's loading. We're going to load that right into R, and it will show up in here as a data frame. Lots of variables here. And you can see that it has this concept column is what you would probably consider the table name. So sex by age. And then here you can see each of the rows is the various columns from that table. So we have the total number of people, the total males under 5, males 5 to 9, etc. And they have these variable names over here on the left. So it's the table name B01001 underscore and then a column number basically. And so all of our variable names that we need to use are here in this column, and that's what you're going to look for. You'll see also I've written a little code here that will spit this variable list that we were just looking at out to a CSV so you could work with it outside of R if you wanted to, if you're more comfortable doing that. Sometimes that's useful because then you can filter it down to just what you want, do more of the searching that you want. Might be easier for you to work with. So we're going to kind of gradually work our way through from some simple API calls out to some more complex ones. So the most basic part is what we're going to do here is we're going to create a new data frame called HH Income _ 2018. That's a name that I'm giving it. And these two characters together are what's called the assignment operator. Now the rest of this is syntax directly from TidyCensus. So if you look at the code book for TidyCensus or the directions, the web page, it's going to tell you that if you want to get ACS data, you use the command called get_ACS. There's a separate command if you want to get decennial census data. And then you need to feed it a variety of variables. The first is geography. And so this would be like state, place, county subdivision, metropolitan area, things like that. And on the website, there's a really nice list of exactly the word you need to put in here to get the geography level that you want. And then you need to tell it which year it is. So we're doing the 1 year data for 2018. And then you need to tell it which survey. We're doing the 1 year. If you'd want to do 5 year, you'd do ACS 5, for example. And then you can feed it the variables you want. And you'll see this is set up so that we could have more than one variable that we want to pull back. But in this case, we're just going to pull one, median income. And notice that I'm assigning the column a name, and I'm med income, I abbreviated a bit, and I'm telling it use this variable out of that table and put it in a column called med income. So if we run this little bit, run selected lines, we're going to get a new table over here in our environment. And I'm going to open that up and you'll see now it's given me the GeoID, the name. It's repeating that variable that I gave it. And then we get the estimate and we get the margin of error, or the MOE. You get that for everyone. And so we should have 52 rows, which is all the states plus the District of Columbia and should be Puerto Rico. There you go, down at the bottom. So that's good. 1 year of data. Nice, clean, neat. Notice that our column names are, some are uppercase, some are lowercase. It's a mix. R is case sensitive, so it's a little bit problematic having those. So I like to use a package called Janitor, and let's make sure we have that loaded. There it is, library Janitor, to clean up those column names on the way in. So I'm going to add that here at the end. I'm going to add a pipe, which is a percent sign, a greater than and a percent sign, and you can do, on a Windows machine, you can do Control-Shift-M to get it to as a keyboard shortcut, and I believe on a Mac it's Command-Shift-M. And what you do is you put that at the end of your last row, and then you can either keep typing on that same row or you can hit Enter and start a new row. And Janitor has a function called Clean Names, and you just do clean names, open parens, close parens. And now we're just going to rerun that whole thing. And now if we open up our data frame, you'll see that it has lowercase all the names. I find that just having it all in lowercase is easier for me in the typing down the road in any subsequent code I might want to write, because I don't have to remember, was that uppercase or was that lowercase? I just know now that everything is lowercase. So you can also view your results right in our Markdown by just calling the data frame. You'll see that it's showing us kind of the same view that we were just looking at, but down here in our data frame. If we go down a little bit where it says change the geography, you'll see that in the previous example we did state level. Now let's say we want to do county level. So we've changed the geography to county. We still have everything else is the same. If we run this, it's going to give us a little message saying it's getting this data. And now we should have a new data frame with 838 observations, that means rows, and 5 variables, which means 5 columns. And you'll see that it's every county in the whole US. We did not specify what we wanted. But we could, down here now, we could set it so we could say, I only want Minnesota counties, or pick your state. You just put the postal code abbreviation in for the state as a new argument in here in this. We'll run this. And I'm going to show the results down here. And there we go. Now we have, it's only 14 rows of data. And Minnesota has 87 counties, but I'm only getting 14 counties back because the American Community Survey 1 year only provides data for places with 65,000 or more people. So these are the 14 largest counties in Minnesota, not all the counties in Minnesota. Just a little something to remember. So as I mentioned before, that this variables section, you can add all kinds of variables in there. So, and you can, in this case, I'm going to pull from different tables even. So for example, what we were pulling previously was the median household income for everybody, regardless of race or ethnicity. And that was from this B19013 table. But you'll see that there's B19013B, which is for African American or Black people. And then there's Native American, Asian, other, multiracial. And then there's some tables that just take white non-Hispanics, and then another for Hispanic. And so I'm pulling from all of those different tables, but I'm going to put it together in one data frame in R. I've done this with American Fact Finder, data.census.gov. Each one of these, to get each one of these variables, is a separate table, a separate download, a separate file that you have to unzip from a zip file, and then you have to somehow put it all together. Once I saw that R could do this, I was sold, because we're going to get one really lovely table really fast. So this is, got to find it over here. There we go. So this is every state, and you'll see that it has the median household for everybody, Blacks, Indian, Asian, other, all of them, all right there. Boom. And every state. It's beautiful. Here, so let's look at, I'll look at that again. I'm in the wrong one. We want name equals Minnesota. Oops, I forgot my clean function. Let's add that back. I'm going to run it again. So now my names are clean, and I'm going to say filter name equals Minnesota. See if I can just get, there we go, there's Minnesota. 8 rows. So fast and easy. Okay, so notice that in this last one, the rows came back with, the table came back with 1 row for each variable. This is what's called tidy data or long data, where there's really only one data column, in this case estimate. A lot of times we work with data where instead of these being each in a row, there would be 1 row for Minnesota, and all the different groups would be going across in columns. And you can get that by setting the output. So the default on TidyCensus is an output of tidy, which is what we got here. If we want to make it wide, we can add another argument here called output equals wide. And let's, I'm going to add my clean names here. And let's see what we get here. Gotta find, there it is, wide. So now you can see that we have 52 rows. So we have our states plus DC and Puerto Rico, but now we have all the estimate for all, the MOE for all, the estimate for Black, the MOE for Black. Those MOEs kind of make this a little more problematic to do it this way, but maybe there's some reason you might want to do it this way. So it is an option. Let's close that down. Go back to our script. All right, so now let's get a little fancier. We can get multiple years at the same time. Now this is when we really ramp it up. So we can do more of looping and a little fancier coding in order to have it go pull each year of data. Because keep in mind, the Census Bureau is kind of storing this in a way that we need to tell it to go get the 2016 data, go get the 2017 data, etc. So we're going to set up a series of things here to help us along. So here we're going to make a data frame that, or a list that will it's going to list the variables that we want, and we'll be able to just call this the my variables when we're ready to use it. So this is going to pull race data, race and ethnicity data. So we're going to get the total population counts, and then how many people are not Hispanic, how many are not Hispanic white alone, not Hispanic black, etc., and then a Hispanic count at the bottom. So we'll run this, and now we're going to have a values list over here. You'll see that it's in the environment tab on the upper right. Then we're also going to make a little list of which years you want. So you can add on years here. You know, if we wanted to do 2015, or if we want to do 4 years, you can add that in here quickly, and we're going to run that, and that's going to show up here as a list in our environment. And then this is the main code. So this is using a function from the per package. And then you can see here's get ACS from the TidyCensus package. So we're kind of wrapping a couple of things together. But what we're basically doing is we're going to make a new data frame called states diversity. And then the map underscore DFR is how it does the looping. And we're telling it to loop through all of the years. Here's the years variable that we assigned back up here. And repeat this process for each year. And then we're telling it this should look familiar to you. We're saying get the state geography, and then instead of listing out those variables like we did earlier, we're just going to tell it my variables are in this list that we made that's stored in our session here. And then the year equals .x is part of the per package, telling it the looping part. That's going to be the same every time you use this syntax. And then we're telling it year survey equals ACS1. Notice I've tacked on the clean names. So really this code right here, if you wanted to use it in the future, it could be very, very, you could recode this. You could have it so that it's a standard code that you use every single time, and you could even have, you know, my geography here, and you set the geography somewhere up here so that you really wouldn't ever have to change this chunk of code ever. I'm going to leave it as state right now, but hopefully you get the idea that I'm talking about. So we're going to run this. And it's going to take a little while, because you'll see down here in the console that it's looping through each of the years, and it has now made a big file for us, and you'll see lots of years of data for every state. You have to scroll a ways to get all the, because you'll just see 2015 right now. But it's got all of it's there. So let's see what we have for Minnesota. Boom! There's Minnesota, 2015, 16, 17, 18. Yay, all in one place. That was so fast and easy. Okay, so let's get a little more complicated, and we can get multiple geographies at the same time. If you wanted to do like places and county subdivision and counties and things like that, that's a lot harder. But let's say you want to do all the census tracts in certain states, like the Upper Midwest, or all the counties in 2 states, or something like that. You can do that. It's when you start mixing the geography levels that you run into trouble. So one of the things I've found is I'll download whatever level I want and then bind them together. So for example, remember we downloaded counties from Minnesota, and then we also downloaded all the states, and we can tell it just give me this, filter it to just the state of Minnesota. I think because we cleaned this will not, I need GeoID lowercase. It will bind it all together into one file that I've called Minnesota. So now we have those 14 states, counties in Minnesota, and then we have This bottom row should be the state of Minnesota, but look, here's what it did. Look, because we had the GeoID in the name column. Remember, they were uppercase in one and lowercase in the other. They showed up separately. If we had them all lowercase, they would stack up very nicely. So again, another reason to use the janitor clean names function and keep your data nice and neat. All right, so this is a really great website on getting multiple places for the same geography. So let's say I want the upper Midwest, Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, North Dakota, and South Dakota. I'm going to set a little variable that says those are the states that I want. And then I can tell it, here's my variables that I want, like we did before. And then I can tell it, notice here I've in the states, instead of saying state equals quote MN like we did earlier, I can tell it, here's all the states that I want. And we're going to get county level. And these are the variables we're getting, total population and median income. Notice again, we're grabbing from two different tables. And we will pull all of this at the same time. Down at the bottom, you'll see it's getting Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota. And we should have a file now, multi-state. There it is. Iowa, Minnesota, Wright County, or North Dakota, South Dakota, yay, all in one file. I'm going to end the video here, and I'll do a separate video that gets into the rest of the script where we get more advanced, getting all census tracts, bringing in and exporting shape files, working with geometry, making some maps. So check out that video too. Thank you.